appreciate.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dr. DeJarnette. This is a little bit amateur hour because nobody is better at this than Dr. DeJarnette, but I'm gonna do my best here. So, welcome everybody for joining. I think what are we on? This is the ninth in the series, which is just truly impressive. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in the topic, and we've heard from so many wonderful people over the past couple of months, and today's speaker will be no exception, and we have some still in the queue for the future. So please stay tuned to the series. We're not sure when it'll ever end, but as long as people have questions, we hope to be able to bring good information and data into a conversational setting. So thank you for that, Natasha. What do we have next? And of course, we want to thank all the different organizations that have helped make all this possible, including the University of Louisville Christina Lee Brown Environment Institute, the Green Heart Project, the University of Louisville Superfund Research Center, and the Physicians for Social Responsibility. Just appreciate their help in making sure resources are available for this. So thanks. And the all-important disclaimer, the views expressed by the presenters are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of the host institution here at the University of Louisville. Just need to make that abundantly clear. This is a kind of a forum for discussion. This is not an official position of the University of Louisville. And so overall reminder, we're here because we have a shared commitment to building shared knowledge and really trying to find the truth wherever it is, find the data wherever it exists, and be able to have an informed conversation about it. Dialogue is an important part of the process. So, right after our guest today, we really do value the time to have some meaningful back and forth, and we do archive the questions, and we'll continue to try to bring themes forward as the series goes on. Of course, we want this series to be able to connect folks to resources, so you're only getting the tops of the waves in most cases for these topics. We hope that anybody who's got deep interest in any of these dimensions really does take the time to go do their own research and really connect with additional resources. And then, of course, this is a highly charged topic. We all know that. Everybody that has continued to show up has a real deep interest in the subject matter. We are doing our best with this series to bring a variety of viewpoints. And so I'll just make the request up front that, we maintain respectful discourse. We're grateful for all the speakers who have shared, kind of their hard work that they do in support of this difficult technology, policy, social impact situation. I just would appreciate the respect that you can provide in interactions today. And lots of ways to join the conversation, but our favorite is to get going with our Mentimeter questions. So obviously we're interested in understanding where most people are, where the audience is around these topics. And so this is a tool that we've found a lot of utility in. So we'd really appreciate you taking the time to go ahead and get yourself set up with Menti, using the QR code, going to the website, however, whatever's easiest for you, entering the code for the session today, and then you'll be able to fully participate and we'll get your input. Okay, so we just have a handful of questions just as sort of, kind of a baseline to see where everybody is. So first question, what role should communities play in determining where data centers are built? And we've already got 12 responses in, and we'll get a few more in, and I'll see what the early data looks like. Okay, so a key role. We don't know what role. We think it's about zoning, a major role, zoning, decision makers, absolute authority to approve or deny, input, Communities should be in early, should be involved, should get involved. So it's good. This is very consistent, I think, with what we've seen over the course of the series, the webinar series so far. Kind of many folks coming at this, learning about it, sometimes through the media, sometimes through other informal channels. We've certainly heard consistently that there is a role for community, and really, I think what we've been trying to do with this whole series is try to figure out what is an effective role for communities to play in this important topic. All right, do we want to keep going here? Overall, would you favor or oppose the construction of a data center in your area? All right, so got things on both of the bookends. A little more on the oppose and strongly oppose. All righty. I think that's most of our voters there. Okay, I feel knowledgeable about the factors that inform the site selection for data centers. How knowledgeable does everybody feel about how site selection is done? Will help us really get a gauge for, especially for our guests today, to see who's in the room, so to speak. So skewing a little towards not as much knowledge on the topic. So hopefully everybody will have an opportunity to learn something. And then what factors should influence data center site selection? And pick only 3, please. Okay. All right. Good mix. Looks like environment is the leading category here, and health, which isn't surprising. That's been a major theme of the whole series, which is great. Cumulative impacts. Not a strong showing for the zoning people. Land use, we only got a couple of folks focused on that.
So Ted, I'll add a little bit of insight here.
Please.
And the last time we provided the Menti poll, we asked a similar question as it pertained to permitting. These were the top 6 answers that came from permitting. So we wanted to dive a little bit deeper.
All right.
All right. Perfect. It looks like most people have responded. We'll leave this up in case people are still responding. But Ted, we can move to the next part of the agenda, which is the video.
Which is the video. And were you gonna hit play on the video?
Yes, I am going to hit play on
All
the
right. So we,
video.
as is our tradition, we have a little video segment that we think is relevant to the topic today. So it's short. Take it away.
If the sound isn't coming through, please be sure to let me know. Thanks.
A political divide is growing in Michigan over the rapid push to build massive AI data centers, with leaders from both parties split not just across the aisle, but within their own ranks.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer and President Donald Trump support fast-tracking the projects, but other Republican and Democratic lawmakers sharply disagree on prosperity or problems to local communities.
Now, I've been following the data center boom in Southeast Michigan closely. There's a QR code on your screen right now that can take you to all those stories. Tonight, I'm hearing from lawmakers about the political dividing lines of AI and listening to those caught in the middle.
So when I moved in here about just under 5 years ago, this was all farmland. The data center is going to be located right over here where all these mounds of dirt are currently. We're a stone's throw away from it.
The planned AI data center in Lyon Township couldn't be closer to Mike Casey's house. He's on the board of the Downtown Development Authority. And yet, he tells me he only found out about the project a month after it had already received provisional approval.
My wife has Meniere's disease, which is an inner ear. She constantly has ringing no matter what already. Add 250 AC units that are running 24/7, 365.
He doesn't see it as a partisan issue, but says he doesn't feel like his township is fighting for him.
I would love to see one group or the other come out and try to fight for the community and fight for the constituents that they're supposed to be representing versus just saying, I'm here to support my constituents, I'm here to support the residents, but never ever functionally doing that.
Artificial intelligence is the future. It's undeniable.
I know that my people are against these, and I'm personally against them. I live out on a farm. I'm out in the country. This could be right next to me.
That's State Representative Mark Tisdale and State Representative Jim DeSena. Both are Republicans. Each represents a very different district, one suburban, one rural, and they have very different positions on AI data centers. Representative Tisdale says the industry harnesses Michigan's strengths.
The engineers, the cool temps, and the access to an abundance of water. This seems like a natural spot for a data center. In a state that has been flat in growth for 2 generations, and a state that's fallen 20 places since the turn of the century in per capita income, this is going to be a corporate neighbor that will be very difficult to turn away when you start looking at the math.
I think some people will say, oh, you can't stop progress. You know, progress happens whether you like it or not. And I think that's kind of some of the attitude that we get from our national politicians and even our governor.
Governor Whitmer has come out publicly in support of such AI data center projects, like the Stargate OpenAI facility in Saline Township. She's called it transformational, the largest investment in Michigan history, and said it would help Michigan continue to lead the future of advanced manufacturing and technology. Similarly, the Trump administration has thrown its weight behind accelerating the build-out of AI, prioritizing AI data centers, the power infrastructure that supports them, and has attempted to limit state regulations.
This is one of those areas where I wouldn't agree with President Trump or Governor Whitmer.
Representative Jim DeSena says he thinks 85% of people living in his district, maybe higher, are against the data centers.
They're a nuisance, they're loud. Anyone who lives around one is going to see a drop in their property values, and they also increase utility rates. They don't decrease. If we look at the record, utility rates go up, not down.
Plus, he's concerned about where the centers are being sited.
They're going to the cheapest places possible and the communities that can least afford to fight them.
I also sat down with Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Dr. Abdul El-Sayed.
We've been hearing about it in town halls that we've done across 75 different communities now, 230 public events. It comes up everywhere.
His campaign took the unusual step of publicly posting terms of engagement for data centers, laying out what he believes companies and utilities should agree to when bringing these facilities to communities.
Can you give me a sense of the things that were most important to you to put out there?
Yeah, number one, if you're promising jobs, those should be good union jobs, and you should create every single job you said you were going to create. Number two, our rates should not go up. We should not be subsidizing in terms of our electrical costs. Three, that some of the revenue that our local utility companies are taking should be spent to improve our reliability, not just keep it where it is.
El-Sayed says he's not against AI data centers coming to Michigan. And while U.S. senators have no say on what happens on the state level, he believes a framework with appropriately aligned incentives needs to be established on the federal level.
The whole point of having these terms is to clarify what the risks are so that folks who feel like there's nobody on their side know that we're paying attention and we're arming them with the information to advocate for themselves, and we'll be out there advocating for them right alongside them.
Mike Casey tells me right now he's looking for someone, anyone regardless of party, who will stand up and fight for him and his community.
I want to see our country thrive. But at the end of the day, if you aren't caring about how you get there, what's the point?
Now, I really wanted to dig into this topic because every time I cover a data center story, it becomes increasingly clear that the political fault lines are just beginning to be drawn. We're, of course, in very early days of AI, but what it is doing is challenging everyone's political assumptions. This AI is brand new.
And everyone has a different opinion, whether you're a Republican. You saw 2 Republicans and a Democrat, and all with different views. So we're going to have to wait and see.
I think you'll see them flip as well.
As it all shakes out.
Great. Well, thank you.
This is a pretty stunning stat. Half of all of...
Yeah, we're done watching TV for today. That's good. No, thanks. I hope that was helpful. I was talking to Natasha earlier before this, and it is hard to find, stories that are very focused on site selection. And I think we could probably all agree that this is really where this is coming to roost. It's where these things are appearing or not. And so really getting a deeper understanding of the process is hopefully a good use of all our time. So without further ado, I would like to welcome somebody who's a very prominent person in this particular field and who I had the pleasure to get to know probably a little bit over a year ago when a team at the University of Louisville and Western Kentucky University were focused on a grant proposal to the National Science Foundation about site selection for data centers. And unfortunately, that proposal didn't get funded. It got a good score, but didn't get funded. That doesn't count. Steve was introduced to me as somebody who has been a leading voice, for this issue. He is currently the president and CEO of NetChoice, which is an industry consortium. He can tell you a little bit more about NetChoice. He's a well-known expert on internet governance going back quite a ways. And so there have been a lot of issues with the internet and public policy. And Steve is someone who Congress turns to regularly, interacts with many state elected officials and other state agencies. And so Kentucky is certainly one of the states that he interacts with. And so he'll be able to bring both a national and perhaps even a Kentucky perspective to this issue. He advocates for NetChoice's positions at the National Conference of State Legislators and American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, where he serves on the Private Enterprise Board. So he's got a long bio. I'm not going to chew into his time introducing himself. I'm just very delighted, Steve, that you made the time to join us. We're looking forward to learning from you about site selection and about your thoughts about the industry, where it is and where it's going. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ted, and Dr. DeJarnette. I want to just set the table a little bit and then get into the site selection specifics. I'm representing the tech industry. It's where I made my living, built and sold a software company, and got into the advocacy business for the industry. So America's tech industry are the same companies you'll see at netchoice.org. You'll see Microsoft and Apple, Meta and Google, Amazon, OpenAI, Reddit, X, and a long list of companies. And we represent their issues at the state, federal level, and in the courts. 6 or 7 years ago, my largest members asked my help to try to get more states to embrace data centers. So this is long before AI. And they did so because everything that you have on your phone is connected to the cloud on every screen. That is all in the cloud. And so is the university's systems, cloud storage, the government systems. Your employers undoubtedly have migrated from back offices that are physical on-prem to the cloud. And you're not going to be surprised to know that the cloud does not live up in the sky. The cloud is in a data center. It's a building about the size of an aircraft carrier. Costs $1 billion to construct. Employs 200 people once it's done. They make 6 figures to maintain the systems. And a data center has to be built on average over the past 15 years of 1 a week. So Meta, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple have built on average for the industry, $1 billion data center every week. And that is before AI arrived. And it's easy to see why. Because if I go back to your phones, I got to ask you, when's the last time you went through and deleted your old photos, videos, all the messages that you've ever sent where you attached a photo or a video, or gone in and cleaned up your feed on X, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube? The truth is that storage itself was inexpensive enough that every time, well, Apple says, do you want to spend another $2.99 to have more storage? Nearly everybody clicks yes. The cloud is here to stay, and the cloud is what has been driving us to build so many data centers. AI puts it on steroids, and I'll be happy to cover that too. But I just wanted you to understand that calling it an AI data center is a little bit of a misnomer. We've had to build these data centers before AI, and we still have to continue to build them because the cloud demands it. Okay? So think about in the US today, we have 4,000 data centers, 4,000 already operating, and within the next, say 3 years, we're going to probably have to build 2,000 more. And there are 2,000 under construction right now. That's $2 trillion of private investment. And AI needs data centers for everything that AI does, for all of the training, all of the inference that happens when you're running a ChatGPT session. That's called inference. The training happens once every few months. And that is transformative. But the storage of all the data that's being retrieved to satisfy your query, all the data that's retrieved in order to do the training, all of your outputs that are stored, because when you log into your ChatGPT, you can see there's a history of your previous chats along with the responses that came in. So AI is increasing the need for storage in data centers, but it also increases the need for certain servers in a data center that have NVIDIA chips bolted onto them and all the supporting memory that's with them. And the building doesn't look any different, whether it's got AI chips or not, but the building does consume a lot more electricity and generate more heat when it's doing the AI that you ask it to do. All right, AI is going to be transformative. Even some of the opponents will advocate that, yes, I understand how AI will make us more efficient, and it's a good thing it does. America's workforce gets smaller every single day. Our birth rates are far below replacement. Immigration is minimal. We have fewer workers today than we had yesterday. We need to make workers more efficient just to continue to maintain the economy, let alone grow it. A lot of you have used AI for machine learning. That's been around for 25 years. It's the recognition of photos, translation of voice to text when you talk to your phone, x-rays. All of that is machine learning, and that's a form of AI. But everything changed 4 years ago when we added generative AI. And generative AI is magic. And those of you who have used it have some sense of it, are driving new developments. But the question is, where is it going to live? And that's what site selection is about. America's connectivity is so outstanding that we can build a data center anywhere in the country that serves users everywhere in the country. Think about it. There are no hyperscale data centers in Kentucky. Zero. This call is being hosted outside of Kentucky. All of your phones and all of the apps on your phone, they're not in Kentucky. They're on servers in a data center somewhere else. All right. So we choose to build data centers where the electric utility has the capacity and where the community welcomes the data center. So I have the perspective of doing this for several years. And until 14 months ago, communities would line up for a data center. Rural communities know the transformation of $1 billion of investment, 200 jobs paying 6 figures for high school grads, and paying a substantial portion of the property tax of the entire county. And the track record on that is all we have to rely on. The data we have on counties that have been able to dramatically reduce the property tax rates while still investing in infrastructure and services. The track record on electricity rates is the opposite of what the video you heard. Department of Energy data backs it up. And the water use is a myth. And so much of this is falling on an environment that has concerns and questions. And I'll never say it's irrational. It's not. I think a lot of Americans in this time of rapid change have significant anxiety over AI. How is it going to affect jobs of you, your kids, your grandchildren? How is it going to affect our culture? What is AI's effect going to be on national security or cybersecurity? Those are legitimate questions. I understand that. And yet rejecting a data center in your community doesn't mean that AI doesn't arrive. Again, the connectivity is such that you're all using AI in your lives today, and none of it is hosted in Kentucky. So it doesn't have to be here. So our industry would rather just go where we're welcome. But let me tell you what happens with the story. We'll come to a county. The first part of site selection is, does the state treat data center equipment the same way it treats manufacturing equipment, agricultural equipment? In other words, a new lathe goes into a plant, they don't pay sales tax on it in any of the states. A farmer puts a fence post or a new tractor, does he pay sales tax? No. From $1, and it's been there for 100 years. But data center industry evolved only in the last 20 years. So the sales tax code, most of the United States, did not explicitly allow the equipment that goes into a data center among the listed equipment for manufacturing or the listed equipment for agriculture. So my job for 7 years was to go state to state and then make the presentation that you could get in the game on data centers, costing nothing, if you just treated the data center equipment the same way you treat manufacturing and ag. We're successful in 27 states. Last year, Kentucky did the same. The electricity is still taxed, services are still taxed, property taxes are paid, but the sales tax on new equipment is exempted the same way it is for manufacturing. So if anybody tells you that there's some kind of a subsidy, there's some sort of a special deal, it isn't. It's the same deal that you've had for 100 years on manufacturing and farming equipment. And I argued this in the Courier Journal a couple of months ago. Excuse me. So given that, the state can enact a sales tax exemption at zero cost and zero outlay, and therefore attract data centers that wouldn't otherwise have come to Kentucky. And when Kentucky passed the exemption, Kentucky started seeing a lot of interest. And the interest would show up from hyperscalers, like the companies that I represent, plus some smaller players. They're speculators looking to get in on the AI boom. And then you have Bitcoin miners, not part of my group and not a responsible operator in your communities. So it would be helpful to distinguish between operators that build state-of-the-art data centers, and I can share a picture of one that'll help you a little bit. This is from a study that NetChoice did with Commonwealth Economics. A number of you are probably familiar with Commonwealth. They examined five different regions of Kentucky to determine how Kentucky would realize state and local tax revenue if you were fortunate enough to land a data center. But the answer in going into a community is we look at parts of a state that has an exemption, and then we look at parts of the state where the utility has the electricity capacity to serve. What you see in these pictures is a cluster of $4 billion data centers. So it's a $4 billion data center complex, uses about 400 megawatts of electricity. And it might be on a few hundred acres. The idea is to buy enough acreage so that we can be significantly far from the property line, so there's no visual or noise impact. 4,000 data centers in America, and they all meet the local noise ordinance. There's 4,000 data centers in America. So fears of noise that would keep his wife up at night are unfounded and are not supported by the record. Nonetheless, the facts are hard to register with somebody who has anxiety. I was in Maysville late last year in December for 2 nights of hearings, and a parade of folks went into that meeting with coordinated T-shirts, videos they'd produced. They had posters, and everything they complained about, noise, electricity, and water use, we had definitive answers to. But that doesn't mean we're going to persuade them. The county commissioners cannot believe the idea of virtually doubling the property tax revenue with a single data center. A data center that only employs 200 people so that they don't have to necessarily build new schools and services. So the site selection part starts with the state. Second, we look for the part of the state where the electrical utilities have capacity to serve and they become our partners. And then we look for affordable tracts of land. And you might say these buildings themselves only need a few acres, right? But we need to be far from the edge. We want to be good neighbors. So we'll buy enough land so that the setbacks will satisfy any concerns someone has about what it looks like or what it sounds like. And that means that we will find land. If you look at it right now, cropland in the United States represents about 400 times more than data centers do in the United States for those 4,000. The total area of the lot is not what I'm not talking about the buildings, but the plot that it's on. So the utility will work with us to find appropriate places in the county that are zoned the right way. So we talked about sales tax exemption, power availability, and the third leg on site selection is to understand where the appropriate zoning is. There are parts of this country that don't have zoning at all. It's pretty amazing. But Kentucky allows the zoning to be controlled at the local level, and that's typical. That means you look at a county and say, what is the category of land use that a data center would be? Do you consider it light industrial? But in many counties, data center is not listed as all as a permitted use. So sometimes we'll go in and modify the zoning ordinance to say that a data center with certain conditions would be considered a light industrial use. At that point, we look at the county and say, well, where is there land available in this county that satisfies the light industrial zoning so that we could build there? Sometimes that plot of land is minimal, and we may need 500 acres, and we prefer it to be in a different part. Utility wants us to be there, and then we have to do a rezoning. So I was in Maysville for both of those. The zoning ordinance change to make it allowable, and then second is the rezoning of ag land, in most cases, to light industrial so that a data center could be built. And all of this takes years and costs millions in the site selection process. And the right way to do it is public meetings. The right way to do it is to educate the citizens and to make sure they understand what they get versus what they have to give. It's very challenging with an audience that has a high level of AI anxiety, whether they're on the left or on the right. This is not a partisan issue. In Maysville, after addressing the noise, water, and electricity concerns, I turned to a group of people and asked, so are we good now? And the answer was, no, not really, because we really don't want AI. And two other people stood up and said, I just don't want all this extra electricity burn because it's going to affect the climate change problem. So if someone is anti-corporate, anti-tech, environmentally driven, or they just have concerns about AI, they're in a position to say, I'd rather not build it here. And when that happens, we do our best to educate them. We do our best to educate the lawmakers, which is the county commissioners, so that they know they're doing the right thing for the community. In some cases, it could cost them their job, as you've seen in some elections. So it's such a challenge to be up there talking to the commissioners who are sitting at a table here and a room full of people. And we do our best, to be honest, but there's a low degree of trust, especially in rural America. I think it really hit its peak during COVID. During the lockdown of COVID, I think a handful of Americans lost any trust of the government, medical establishment, organizations. They don't trust business. Certainly not a guy who comes in from Washington, D.C. who talks fast. And they don't trust the media. So what do people trust? I'm afraid they trust what they see on Facebook or a podcast. And anyone can post anything incorrect on a website. I'll give you an example. Oldham County, Kentucky. A company completely inexperienced at data center pops into Oldham County and suggests they're going to build a data center in the backyards of some very large estates in an odd-shaped group of land that is zoned as agricultural. This was a hospitality investment company that had no idea what they were doing, and they made a complete mess of it. By the time it was announced, there was a Facebook group called We Are Oldham County. And I go to that page, I join the group, and I cannot believe what's being posted. There are pictures of data centers with smoke coming out of it, like smokestacks, or dirty water flowing out of the side. They're 7 stories high, and there's pictures, maybe generated with AI, that have no bearing on the reality of the 4,000 data centers we have in America today. And yet, those are shared in a group. Overnight, the Oldham County, We Are Oldham County, had several thousand followers, half of whom were out of state activists. Some of those out of state were not Americans, we're not even people. But nonetheless, I don't want to discount the concerns of real people. And those of you on this call, if you're concerned about water, electricity, land use and noise, if you're concerned about AI, I'm not here to diminish your concerns. Because ultimately, if the county itself is not confident that the benefits exceed the risks, we will move on to another county. And that's what they did in Oldham County. That's what we'll do in any county. And we win about half the time. Prior to a year ago, we won all the time. We always got the zoning and built the data center, and those 4,000 communities that have them could not be happier, and they want more. So again, our industry is not preying on communities. We are making ourselves available, and the communities that pick it get $1 billion. This is the study that we're releasing tomorrow, is a $4 billion complex. That's 4 buildings that you see in the picture. So we need a site that is relatively level. We prefer that the land be affordable. We're going to buy several hundred acres, so we have setbacks that are appropriate. And for 2 years it takes to build each of these structures on here, there'll be 3,000 construction workers up and down through the process. And then as soon as we finish building one in the front, we start on building number 2. This is a 4-building complex. 4 buildings, $4 billion. We burn 400 megawatts for that data center. And the benefits are astounding. This new study we're producing in Kentucky talks about over the course of 2 years of construction and the 10 years of operation, over $400 million in local property tax, local school tax, and local real property tax. $220 million in tax revenue for the public school districts. $237 million to the state because of the state's share of the property tax revenue and the utility tax and all of the sales taxes and income taxes on items that are not exempt. Again, the construction workers come and go, and then when we're done, we put 200 people to work in each of these buildings. The 200 people are high school and trade school grads. They are not college grads. So we prefer to train, hire and train locally, and these are jobs that average 6 figures. Okay, so this is enabling somebody to work in a data center and not have to cross the river and work in Cincinnati to find a job to support their family. So with all of that to offer and the flexibility of going anywhere we want, you can see that our industry would rather not fight battles. We go in and meet with the staff, the county commissioners, will describe what exactly they need. We ask them to spend zero, nothing. The utility is our partner. They're standing right beside us. EKPC, Louisiana Gas and Electric, Kentucky Utilities. They'll say, we have the capacity, and Kentucky has capacity. And if we didn't have the capacity and had to build more, my company will sign a 20-year take-or-pay agreement and give them the ability to shift all of those costs that we cause have to be on us. Your Public Service Commission has never allowed a utility to transfer 1 penny of costs from an auto factory to the people that live in that community. That's been the law in every state, and we follow it. That's when President Trump came up with the Ratepayer Protection Pledge that we all signed it because it's the law everywhere. The utilities are not allowed to shift costs. And in fact, where I live in Northern Virginia or places like North Dakota, electricity bills that I pay have gone down, adjusted for inflation, for the past 5 years, down, because the data centers absorb a huge share of the fixed costs of Dominion Electric, who's our utility here. Now, there are days when PJM, the area I'm in, don't have enough power because they haven't built to support it, and they have to buy wholesale power in the PJM market. In the middle of late in the afternoon on a hot summer day, they're paying 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour more than they did prior to 2022. And that could be attributable. Half of that could be attributable to the fact that there's more demand from data centers. But PJM is the only area that's experienced a wholesale increase. And despite the wholesale increase, my bills are lower because the fixed costs are absorbed by the data centers. So with all of this, we pick the site, we educate the county. Sometimes we will have had the county officials sign a non-disclosure agreement so that we share with them all these detailed plans in the hopes that the plans don't go public before we've even bought the land and had it rezoned. When that happens, typically the deal blows up because speculators will come in and the land becomes inaccessible. But I don't think that that's going to be the practice anymore. If we're going to do something in Kentucky, I think we need to be as public as possible, as early as possible, because the disclosure, the non-disclosure, or the anonymity of the data center will tend to really make people nervous, and there's no need to incur that. So if Facebook's looking to build something in Kentucky, if OpenAI, who's building a big one in Hancock, the earlier they go public about what they're building, the better. And when the public shows up, it's important to let them understand the process. Again, if a county has zoning that accommodates a data center, and I can buy land that is already zoned that way, in Kentucky, I have a right to build a data center. If the county doesn't want it, they're going to make it very difficult for us. We'll have protests. We'll have problems getting our building permits approved. And when that happens, we're going to go someplace else. But undoubtedly, the county commissioners hold all the keys. If they think they're doing something that is beneficial for their community over the long run, a community that has struggled to create jobs, whose property tax bills are crippling for older people and have no prospects for young people to work. Those county commissioners in Maysville took a trip up to New Albany, Ohio, just outside of Columbus, and took a look at some data centers and got out of their cars and couldn't hear any noise. They talked to people who work in the data center. They talked to the school district, talked to the guidance counselor, talked to businesses that support it, talked to the county commissioners. And it's clear that places that have a data center want more. In that case, it's easy to vote for it as the right thing to do, but you pay a price for that. There are public officials who get recalled or lose their election, primary election, because they back data centers. And that's because of the atmosphere of disinformation that we have right now. So with that, I think I've tried to get through with you the notion of why we pick a state, county, public utility, and a site, and the zoning that's there. But Ted and Dr. DeJarnette, I'm happy to stop now and take questions or dive into something else deeper.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. That was a real crash course. I know it's not your first rodeo, so it's a time saver, I think, for all of us that you're so candid and direct about what you see as the issues, and certainly with the industry lens, that you have. You did a lot on Kentucky examples, which I think is helpful for a lot of the folks here. But we have a national audience as well, and I'd love just maybe your thoughts about the national picture right now, since you're working all over the place. Where do you think it's going well? Particularly, are there things to learn about places where it's working really well?
I would say that the national picture is similar to what you hear in Kentucky. There's anxiety over AI and disinformation about electricity and water use. And I'm happy to get into water with you in detail, in great detail. I'm an engineer. And that across the country means that when county commissioners reveal they're looking at a site, they're looking at a project, that provokes the kind of reaction you heard on that TV video that you played in the beginning. That instead of paying attention to the 4,000 data centers we have and how much noise, they become alarmed. They read something on Facebook that makes them believe it's going to change the quality of their life. They believe there's going to be too much noise. So media loves to cover that. Advocates against technology, advocates against climate change are quick to echo that, amplify it, and it matters in an election year. So we have seen states like Ohio, which is number 3 in the country on data centers. Number 1 is Virginia, then Texas, then Ohio. Georgia's the next one in the list. Kentucky is 0. You have no hyperscale data centers at all. But in all those cases, with an election just a couple of months away, the issue of data centers gets conflated with the issue of AI. I reminded you earlier that without AI, I still have to build one of these a week just to store the stuff on your phone. So let's just be that clear on that, your phone and the cloud. But AI creates this anxiety, and it's showing up in election results. There were primaries yesterday where incumbents who backed data centers for all the right reasons lost. Okay, so that leads folks who don't want to lose their next election to preemptively get out there and be tough on data centers and demand that they pay their own way on electricity, they use no water at all, make sure they mitigate noise below 50 decibels like it is for the county. And that kind of a pledge is fine. Remember, every state in the country prohibits the utility from shifting costs from my data center to your bill. It's been the law. So we are happy to sign ratepayer protection pledges that come along. On water use, think about it. The thirstiest data center in the United States is in Iowa. It's at one of the Google data centers in Council Bluffs. Over the course of a year, on the hottest of days, that data center will evaporate some water, which reduces their electricity use by 20%. So evaporating into hot air drops the temperature from 100 degrees to 80 degrees, and that cooler air then cools the closed loop that is running in and out of the data center. So the evaporation of that water such as you see from cooling towers, is going to show up on certain afternoons of certain days. And over the course of a year, the thirstiest data center Google has uses no more water than a municipal golf course. Okay, so relax on the water and realize that when we build a data center in Arizona or part of the country that's dry, we won't use any water for cooling. We just have to use 20% more electricity. Okay, so that's a trade-off, and engineers make those trade-offs. We don't have to pick a site that has water. If you have water, it's going to be a more attractive site. And you've all taken some level of science to know that when you use the water that evaporates, it's no different than a reservoir, swimming pool, golf course, or cropland that's being irrigated. The water didn't leave the planet. It's in the skies over eastern Kentucky. There is no pollution of water because no water touches any of the equipment. This is a closed loop, and the only water is that which is used to cool one side of the closed loop. So things that you hear about water, they're factually incorrect. Making that clear, it's very challenging to do. And in an election season with superheated stakes, I am seeing people that wink and a nod and say, yep, I know you don't use any water, but it's a big deal, so I'm gonna do a pledge. I'm gonna do a moratorium. Or a governor stands up and says, I'm gonna do a pause on all these data center permits. Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania did it yesterday. Last summer, Governor Shapiro was celebrating alongside President Trump in Western Pennsylvania, where I'm from, because Google and the utilities were making a $100 billion investment to revive an old coal plant, turn it into a gas plant, support AI and data centers. But now, because an election is coming up, Governor Shapiro has said, I'm going to put a pause on all that and look at it carefully. Governor Abbott of Texas said the same thing 2 weeks ago. And that's politics, and we welcome it. Because at the end of a hard audit that looks at the data centers we already have and looks at the promises that are made and kept, water, power, and noise are non-issues. That still may not make you happy, Ted, if you're really nervous about AI. And if you believe that somehow blocking that data center is going to stop AI from coming into your world, then I don't know if I can help you with that. I'm not characterizing you. I'm not. I'm just saying typically.
No, I understand. One thing, and we've heard it in the posted in the chat, to get to sort of the facts. I think this, and you've made a really good point about just the variety of sources of information that are out there. I think it might be fair to say it is difficult to know where trustworthy data are. And so, do you have any advice, for resources that are uncontroversial about data centers, about their power, about their water? Anything that kind of feel as unbiased as possible. Any advice?
Yeah, of course I do, and I will share after the call's over. I will send you an email with 15 different links in it,
okay,
the documents, and then I would welcome you to send it to your team, and people can reply to me. What I'm displaying right now is just the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy did a 5-year study on electricity rates across America, and then the vertical axis is the cost per kilowatt hour and how much it's changed. And it's adjusted for inflation, so these are real. And on the bottom axis is how much increase did they have in electricity demand. In places like Texas, Virginia, North Dakota, where demand growth was driven by data centers, the cost per kilowatt hour didn't go up, it went down. And that is because the utilities get to build larger infrastructure and we pay all the costs. That drives down the fixed costs that show up on your bills. So the experience here is that data centers reduce electricity bills. Now, as I said before, on a hot afternoon in the PJM service territory, if your utility doesn't have enough power for you, they have to buy it on the wholesale market. And the wholesale market right now is reflecting more demand than there is supply. Our country's grid is woefully out of date. And the same Department of Energy study, when I send it to you, shows that there are 3 factors that have made electricity rates go up. And the first, they said, was weather issues that break infrastructure, and inadequate upgrading of the grid over time, and renewable portfolio standards. States that embraced renewable, like solar and wind, and allowed their coal, gas, and nuclear to shut down, have found that they don't have the base load they need. And therefore, on days when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing, they have to buy power where? On the wholesale market. So that contributes to a problem in the PJM market where you are and I am, but not so much in the other markets. So I'll give you an entire list of documents you can look at. This is dense material, but the data is there. And I see Kareem has a question.
Yeah, hi. Good to see everyone again. It's great to be back in this group as we continue this conversation about data centers. And we know that it's a pivotal piece of the policy conversations we're going to have over time. Steve, thank you for your information. I think it's more of a comment than a question, but I think we want to be careful about making conclusory statements on either end. So saying things like, data centers make energy prices go down. I don't know that that's a statement you can make with true intellectual honesty. What you can say,
Kareem,
I think
you're
what you
gonna have
can
to look
say,
at the paper.
correlation is not causation. And I think if we're going to have this conversation in an honest way, it's really important to identify what the inputs are and what the potential outputs are. So I think it's fair for us to say that in many cases, data centers are also coming with contributions to cover the cost of transmission. In many cases, they are also generating a lot of their own power. But to just sort of make a blanket statement that they make costs go down for everyone is you conflating correlation with causation. But what we can't point to is that they have a higher degree of energy demand. And we can also point to the fact that we need higher infrastructure investments. We need more generating capacity. And we need to make sure that people are being more efficient about the energy that they do use. So I just want to sort of pause and not necessarily contradict you, but also say that we need to be a little careful about how we talk about what the consequences are of the presence of these particularly large energy users.
Good advice. Thank you.
Let me do some of the greatest hits out of many of the questions, because there's a recurring theme around non-disclosure agreements. You touched on it. You explained the rationale that you need to be able to share the specifics before being able to acquire the land or get the zoning done. I mean, could you go into a little more about what is going on, since there's been a lot of attention over the course of the series about those kinds of agreements and how that then interacts ultimately, potentially downstream with the community. What are your thoughts about it all?
It's nothing to do with data centers. Every auto plant, every economic development project in every county in the United States does an NDA until they move the project along, an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, so they can share everything they can with the county staff and the economic development team, so they can help to associate sites that are appropriate, educate us on the zoning, pair us up with utility, help to understand transportation needs and others. That is standard procedure, and it has been for a century in America. In this case, because of the heightened concerns and AI anxiety, it backfires. It creates a perception that somebody's doing something inappropriate. It creates a perception of opaque, and it, I think, increases the degree of opposition that shows up when it does go public. So I have advised my members, they don't do what I say all the time, but I have advised them strongly that they go public as soon as they have secured at least options on the land. And if it turns out that once it's public, the public opposes it, the county supervisors won't vote for the rezoning, then we move on to a different county. And as I said before, right now it happens about half the time.
That's helpful. Yeah, that makes some sense. Clearly, it is something that it's a little bit like why nobody learns civics anymore in school. Like we don't always know the way the government functions, right? And so I hear your point. I remember when Amazon was looking for a second headquarters or whatever, that was years ago, and every community was bidding to get these thousands of employees, and they were all under NDAs, and there was a whole bunch of blowback back at that time. Ultimately they couldn't move into the community they wanted to because of the discovery of that as part of a typical economic development conversation. So thanks for clearing that up. There are a couple of questions about some of these environmental impacts. That comes up frequently. Noise specifically. I wonder if you could just sort of talk about it, mostly because it does, it appears to me, as not somebody who's as smart as you on this topic, that there are a variety of implementations of data centers, and there have been many, many different kinds of designs in size, in specific attributes, the way they handle backup power, all these things. There isn't a single data center, prototype archetype data center. So many in this audience are very familiar with the site down in Memphis, that has the, whatever, jet engine, turbine, backup generators. Clearly, those are noisy. So, I think I think this is really an important issue. Is it fair to say there's no noise, or is it fair to say there are some noisy implementations? There are better ways to develop and design and build data centers than others. I mean, can you sort of provide a little bit of the kind of color to that?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, I think I was brutally honest about the fact that there's a handful of Bitcoin miners who make terrible noise and don't build a data center, such as the one I showed you earlier. They may have the fans on the roof or in the back. X is one of my members, and they built a complex called Colossus in Western Tennessee, and he is using gas reciprocating engines and some gas turbines to power his data center. It's in an industrially zoned area, but there are neighborhoods that at some distance away that believe that it could have an impact on them. And if that's the case, they are exercising enforcement of air quality control. The noise, they are meeting their noise at the perimeter of the property. But if the county where that is permitted is allowing 50 or 60 decibels at the edge, not at the source, but at the edge, then they are meeting the law. So what I just displayed was a little bit on noise. A data center will generate no more than allowed at the border, at the perimeter. So inside a data center, I told you we had fans to cool the closed loop. Those fans make noise, and that's it. That's the only noise from a data center. But those fan noise that will carry, especially on a windy day, which is why we would prefer to buy a lot of acreage and be several hundred feet back. It turns out the law is all that matters here, and the local control of noise ordinance will say that at the edge of that property or that the first affected adjacent property, you can register no more than 60, 50 decibels, whatever it is. And to put it in context, if we're together having a conversation, that's a 60 decibel conversation. Data centers are in the 40 to 60 range. It's 80, 90 decibels when you're pushing your lawnmower. And OSHA claims that it's dangerous if you get above 85. So the noise that's generated at the fan is not the noise that matters. It's the noise at the edge of the property, which is why we buy a lot of property. And you understand with noise the noise attenuates to the square of the distance. If I'm twice as far away, I only have 1/4 as much noise.
All right, super helpful. We are out of time. I want to be respectful of your time. I think we've learned a ton. I'm grateful that you've come here. I know that there's just a wide range of emotions and different levels of expertise, all over this issue, and it means a lot that you would spend time, with our community, really bringing a career of expertise here. So.
And it's a point of view, and I've been assertive and aggressive with points because I've been doing this a long time, and the facts bear me out. And when I send you the email, circulate it to your team. Study up a little bit on the way utilities assign costs, look at the water use, and realize that there could be a bad actor. These idiots in Oldham County made it bad for the rest of Kentucky. But the companies that drive your lives, the cloud providers, Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon, Apple, and OpenAI, they build responsible data centers, and they're only going to build them in communities that want them.
All right. Well, again, thank you for your time with us. Thank everybody for the great questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to them all. There's a post survey. I hope you all take it. And then we've got another speaker coming up. Water, is a topic that sticks around. And Dr. Iris Stewart-Frey from Santa Clara University will be talking about her work on water and data centers. So I hope you all join us for that. And there is another data center webinar coming up yet today at 2 o'clock, brought to you by the American Public Health Association, the Healthy Climate Wisconsin, PSR, Climate Health folks, Medical Society. Please, if you have time for that today, to check it out. I'm sure there's lots of things that are going to be rolling across our screens here for the coming months. So appreciate everybody's participation today and in the past and in the future. So thank you so much. Look forward to our next time together. And thank you, Dr. DeJarnette, for keeping this mostly together. Really appreciate it.